Canary Wharf, a global financial centre, a home for tens of thousands of Londoners, a symbol of London's dynamism. But 50 years ago, this part of the capital was derelict. The once proud docklands lay abandoned and polluted. So how did we get from this to this? The answer lies in one of the boldest urban policies in post-war British history, the Urban Development Corporation. Today, Britain faces a housing shortage that has now reached crisis proportions. The dream of living independently in fast-paced cities, with all the vibrancy and opportunity they offer, is proving harder and more expensive to obtain, especially for young people. This is just as bad for our cities as it is for the young. City-based businesses need to be sure they can tap into the talent and the spending power of the best and brightest. The government has signalled an intent to build, but its proposed reforms, though welcome, are not likely to solve housing shortages in our biggest cities. And regardless of targets, the planning system will be slow and local resistance will prove tricky to overcome. The Adam Smith Institute thinks there is a compelling answer to the knotty problem of urban housing shortages. We propose reviving the Urban Development Corporation model and use it to supercharge the growth of our major cities. So what exactly is a UDC? Urban development corporations are public bodies empowered to regenerate parts of cities that have been left behind and where local authorities are unwilling or incapable of acting. They were created in the Local Government Planning and Land Act 1980, groundbreaking legislation piloted by the then Environment Secretary, Michael Heseltine. Heseltine himself was deeply moved by what he saw as a tragic abandonment of once great centres of commerce, especially in the Liverpool docks. He thought it a moral imperative to do something and not, as some senior government figures had suggested, leave the areas to manage decline. UDCs were designed to be vehicles to arrest decline. Their mandate was simple: clear and regenerate land, attract private investment, and get homes and commercial space built fast. To do that, UDCs were given three core powers. First, they could acquire and manage land, including through compulsory purchase. Second, they were granted special planning powers, taking control from local councils and drastically speeding up approvals. And third, they could build the infrastructure needed, roads, rail, utilities, to make the development viable. But here's what really made UDCs work. They didn't build the homes or offices themselves. They created the conditions for the private sector to do it, at scale and at speed. And unlike many of the UK's new towns, urban development corporations are designed to operate in areas where people already want to live. From inception, UDCs were designed to be deliberately lean, led by a board of experts from business, planning and government, appointed by and accountable to the Secretary of State. They weren't weighed down by red tape. They had the license and the autonomy to get stuff built. The first two of the UDCs, the London Docklands Development Corporation and the Merseyside Development Corporation, came into being in 1981. In the early 1980s, Liverpool was in crisis. Industrial collapse had led to unrest, and the failure to address social and economic problems led to violence on the streets. The Merseyside Development Corporation took on the challenge, starting with the Royal Albert Dock, then a rotting relic of Liverpool's proud maritime past. Across Merseyside, the MDC regenerated nearly 1,000 acres, built hundreds of homes, delivered over 60 miles of roads, and helped create more than 22,000 jobs. By 1998, the dock had been fully restored, becoming home to the Tate Liverpool, the Maritime Museum, and the Beatles' story. Tourism boomed. Today, the area is the UK's top tourist destination outside London, a transformation rooted in the work of its 80s UDC. Meanwhile, in East London, the LDDC delivered 24,000 homes, created over 85,000 jobs, and turned an urban wasteland into a thriving business district. Every £1 of government grant money unlocked £4 from the private sector, an astonishing return on investment of taxpayers' money. And the legacy continues. New lab space, retail premises and restaurants, retrofits, the Elizabeth line, all stand on the shoulders of the work carried out in the 1980s and 90s. The enduring success of UDCs makes them an attractive model to replicate in British cities today. Our report identifies areas of British cities ripe for new UDCs, building on data from our partner Landtech. Let's start with a part of our capital adjacent to the Docklands, the Thames Gateway. Spanning East London, North Kent and South Essex, this new UDC would cover a vast area with strong transport links, the DLR, Elizabeth Line, High Speed 1 and 2 international airports. It's already home to over 3 million people, but has capacity for hundreds of thousands more. If developed intelligently, the Thames Gateway could become a cornerstone of London's future growth, easing pressure on inner-city rents and boosting regional prosperity. Other proposed UDCs include Cambridge, where demand for housing is intense and land for expansion is constrained. A UDC here would help create homes around the city's science and research hubs without waiting decades for incremental planning reform. In Liverpool, a UDC could build on the city's knowledge quarter and new stadium development, pushing forward growth that's already underway but risks stalling without coordination. We also see huge potential for a UDC in Oxford and Bristol, two high-growth cities where the mismatch between housing supply and demand is undermining economic output. What links all these sites is simple. They're not isolated new settlements, they're extensions of existing cities, places people already work, live and commute. And that's the power of the UDC model. It doesn't try to reinvent the wheel. It accelerates what's already possible and makes it happen at scale. We're not proposing we rinse and repeat the work of UDCs from the 80s and 90s. Instead, we want to adapt the model for 21st century needs and political realities. In the 80s, UDCs were criticised for bypassing local democracy, for being unaccountable, or for pushing through developments that lacked cohesion. A new generation of UDCs will need democratic oversight, whether from the central government, metro mayors, or local authorities. UDCs will also need better design principles. They don't need to be prescriptive, but they do need to be thoughtful, because ultimately we need people to be proud of the communities they live in. And we should ensure that UDCs work with, not against, the grain of local identity. That's why our vision for this new wave of exciting urban development in Britain focuses on 4 key tenets. 1. Use UDCs to densify existing urban areas and don't rely on new towns. 2. Let the private sector lead, guided by light touch design codes. 3. Cut bureaucracy but keep democratic oversight. And 4. Prioritise speed, scale and quality. The story of UDCs shows what's possible when we build with ambition and with the single-minded objective of tackling a crisis situation decisively. Reviving urban development corporations could help solve Britain's housing crisis, drive economic growth, and give a new generation the chance to thrive. If we want a country that builds, this is a great place to start.